Making your first $100,000 in the markets could be the biggest milestone in your trading career and propel you towards becoming a full-time trader. But what does it actually take to do it? When I started trading back in 2011, I thought I could do this in a couple months, and boy was I wrong. It took me nearly 8 years before I even started scratching the surface of becoming profitable. But then it came all at once. When I finally figured it out, I made my first $100,000 in the span of a couple months, and then went on to make over $1.2 million in the following couple years. And if you don't believe me, here's some of the proof. So in this video, I'm going to share a full guide on how I was able to do it and how you can too. By the way, if you're looking for a full step-by-step strategy on how I trade each and every week, make sure you check out the link in the description. Now, without wasting any more time, let's get into the video. All right, let's get into how I made my first $100,000 from trading and how you guys can too. So this is going to be a full step-by-step guide on what you actually need in order to make your first $100,000. Now, if you are anybody that's an unprofitable or break-even trader, which I would say 90% of traders are, right? Because the success rate of a profitable trader is extremely, extremely low. What does it actually take to get to this level where you can actually make your first $100,000? And I bring up $100,000 because if you want to be able to take trading seriously and replace your income, I think that if you are in let's say if you're in a first world country and if you're trying to replace your income, and I'm only speaking on from experience being from the States, I would say $100,000 would kind of give you the kickstart to maybe possibly think about leaving your career or leaving a job prospect in order to trade full time. Now, you don't have to trade full time. There are plenty of people out there that hold down other jobs and they're just trading for additional supplementary income. And that's totally fine. Now, when we get into why $100,000, you guys are going to understand why I think $100,000 is really kind of a good starting point to try and get serious about trading. I don't think people really take it seriously unless you're making a level of income that makes sense. All right. If you're going to pour all this time and effort and energy into something, I would say kind of, middle class wage in America is likely at six figures, just because everything is so expensive. It used to be a lot lower, I would say, but with the cost of housing, with the cost of groceries, and if you're really trying to take trading seriously, that I think that the first six figures is probably one of the hardest things to break. Now, this is coming from somebody that made six figures at a regular job and now making multiple six figures from trading. So I know exactly what it takes in order to hit that first $100,000, and I can compare it to actually working at a regular job. So let's get into the first step that we need to think about when we are trying to trade for our first $100,000, and that is going to be education. Now, this is something that I think everybody underestimates when they first get into trading. It's because the barrier to entry is so low. Anybody with a pulse can really go in and open up a trading account. It doesn't really matter how old you are, how much money you have. You can open up a brokerage account regardless of any of those, age differences, financial differences. Anybody can open up a brokerage account, right? So basically, anybody with a pulse can go in and open up their account. All right, and this is kind of where you're going to get a huge separation of people that are kind of taking it seriously, some people that are taking it extremely seriously, and then some people that are just doing it almost as like a lottery, trying to get rich quick scheme. So one thing that I'm going to say is don't underestimate how long this is going to take, and don't get caught in the hamster wheel. So as far as underestimating how long it's going to take, when I first started trading, I thought I could pick this up very quickly and kind of shoot to the moon as far as income. And that was the same thing that happened to me when I joined the actual workforce. And I'm not talking about just a regular low-end job. I'm not talking about, food services or customer service, retail jobs. I did have some of those jobs. Like I worked at Friendly's. I worked at some restaurants doing catering, like cleaning up in the kitchen and stuff, washing dishes, whatever the case was. That's not the type of level of education I'm talking about, because those jobs have ceilings. And what I'm talking about is a real professional career where you get an education, maybe you have a formal education, or maybe you're getting into a trade, and you have to work your way up. So regardless of whatever field you get into, and maybe some of you guys can relate to this, but when you first get on the job and you barely have any experience, you feel like you're owed something more because you feel like you have a deeper skill set and you feel like you can contribute a lot more to this job. but you don't have the experience. And that's really what I went through when I first got my real first job. I thought I could kind of jump to six figures right away because I saw other people making six figures. And I thought to myself, you know what? I'm smart enough. This isn't going to take me that long. And what I didn't realize was I was just lacking in a whole bunch of different areas and not providing the value that is worth six figures. Now, that required me building different skill sets. It required me wearing different hats in the company, and just overall taking on more responsibility. And it's the same thing with trading. When we get into trading, we have zero skills. We don't have a skill set to build upon. We don't have a skill set that can demand $100,000 from the markets. So the first one that I'm going to have you guys focus on is just a basic understanding of technical analysis. Now, everybody knows me as being an ICT trader. Now that I'm further into my trading career, I've realized that there are so many systems out there that work. I think the biggest edge is the trader, which we'll get to later in this segment. But when you're first getting into trading, just study some basic technical analysis and stick with it. There are plenty of really profitable systems out there if you stick with them long enough. Now, that might be a little bit hard to discern at first because you don't know what works and you don't know if certain systems work or not, right? You can have a very basic system, but you're going to have skepticism around that system if you don't put the reps in and you don't actually see results from people trading it. Now, seeing other people's results still isn't going to tell you a whole lot because these people might be faking results. Like, even for me, I've shown tons of results. I actually have bank transactions and I actually have tax returns where I can show you guys I've made multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in the course of a fiscal year. But, everybody can look at that from the outside and say, with some type of skepticism and say, oh, that person's not actually doing that. Well, I had that same process that I had to go through where I didn't really trust the person I was learning from, but I had to get my feet wet anyway. And the only way that you're going to find out is testing it, back testing that strategy, forward testing that strategy, and just getting confident with that specific strategy. And getting caught in the hamster wheel for me was hopping from technical analysis to technical analysis, thinking that there was some better system out there that was more of an edge and really the holy grail. That's really what everybody is searching for. They're searching for that holy grail system that is going to give them a 90% win rate or 100% win rate and give them multiple, 10R trades every single week. And that it doesn't exist. All right. So just coming from me, don't get caught in that vicious cycle of trying to find the next best thing. There's plenty of systems out there from a technical analysis standpoint that work. You're only really looking for something that works 40 to 60, maybe more percent of the time. So anywhere in between 40 to 60% is more than enough to make that first $100,000. All right. So I'm just going to mention 3 of the resources that I would recommend. So obviously for me, I'm an ICT trader. I trade ICT concepts. They work for me. They are very easy to understand if you can kind of peel back the layers and not get so caught up in all the new things that are popping up. All right, so ICT Concepts, one of my top ones. Tom Dante, Trader Dante, is another great one. What I didn't realize was I actually started learning from the person that he learned from. So we had kind of the same mentor. His name is James 16, and really he just taught was basic price action. So pin bars, outside bars, trend lines, horizontal support and resistance. And then Umar Ashraf is very big into footprint charts and reading order flow in the tape. So he's another great resource if you're trying to get into something like that. What I would say is try and pick a couple things that really resonate with you, that are easy to understand and can be easily implemented into the markets, and then focus your efforts on everything else. Because I think everything else that's in here is going to play a much bigger role in your trading than just technical analysis. And that's where I messed up, really. I spent way too much time on this and not enough time on these. And I would say risk management and psychology even are some of the biggest ones. So I'm going to put stars next to these ones. Fundamental analysis, you don't need it, all right? I studied macro and microeconomics just in college, just to get a brief kind of overview of economics. You don't need these, but it's good to understand what's going on with different central banks and different economies throughout the world, because it's going to have an impact on the financial markets, all right? So these are some of the biggest resources that I've used throughout the years. So QTR, Quoth the Raven, is a blog, and it's a free blog, and they put out some really good information as far as articles and things that you can read up on. Yes, there's a little bit of jargon that you have to get through, but over time, you're going to start picking it up. And if there's something that you don't know, right, Google is an amazing research tool. And kind of what irks me the most is there's a lot of traders that get into this game and they're asking me questions for something that's very simply they can put into Google and figure it out on their own. That's what I did coming up. If I didn't know something, I was going out and learning on my own. And you have to take the initiative to be able to do that. If you want to make that first $100,000, you have to be able to take initiative and actually put yourself in the hot seat and learn on your own. All right. And it's the same thing if I were running a company and I had to pay an employee $100,000, yet they took no initiative to do something. If they asked me a dumb question, I'm more likely to fire them and give them a demotion than give them a raise to 100K. Right, so if you're trying to go from 5K, 10K, if you're making in the markets to 100K, you have to take initiative. You cannot be lazy about these things. And when I see people, asking stupid questions that are very easily answered via Google search, you should not be trading. I'm going to be brutally honest with you guys. If you don't have the ability or the willpower and you're just straight up lazy, this is not the game for you. All right, go and find a regular job. So QTR, Caught the Raven, is one of the top resources that I use that's free. These other two, I believe, are paid. So Macro Compass, again, another blog format for fundamental analysis, as well as Market Radar. Market Radar, I believe, has a lot of free resources, though, as well, that you can look into. And then another one would be Financial Source, but that's a little bit more complex and advanced, and there's a lot more jargon that you probably have to get through in order to try and understand it. Risk management, in my opinion, extremely, extremely important. There's tons of people that go over risk management, but I don't think anybody does it better than Van Tharp and Alexander Elder. And, some of their books have everything on trading, so you have to filter it out and just kind of go straight for the risk management. But Van Tharp has some great books that cover, R multiples, how you should be thinking about R multiples, and how to implement them in your trading. And then Alexander Elder, again, just another great resource that covers trading pretty much from top to bottom. So if you're looking for everything, both of these authors will provide a really great basis for your education. Psychology, the obvious ones is Mark Douglas, Trading Composure, and Jared Tendler. Now, psychology is something that some people will never pick up, right? There's people that are 50, 60, 70 years old. They don't even really recognize their own identity or their own character, and they don't understand the decisions that they're making, right? Have you ever ran into people that, maybe they're addicted to shopping and they don't even realize that they're addicted to shopping, or they have bad habits, maybe they're chronic smokers, or they're very unhealthy with their diets, right? This is all psychology. These are all people that haven't gotten a grasp of it, and some people never do. And this is where traders mostly fail. They can get technical analysis down, they can get risk management down, but when it comes to the psychological aspect of trading, some people just never get it. Unless you really focus on it and pay attention to the decisions that you're making in the moment, pay attention to the emotions that you're feeling when you're putting trades on, that's part of education that is, very hard to put a timeline on. All these other ones, I could say, if you were to package it into a course and try and understand them all, maybe a couple years to try and figure that out. But sometimes psychology, some people never figure it out. So there's no timeline on that. I'm sure if you can relate to this, you might have somebody that you talk to and they're going down this path of life and you're trying to talk them out of it. And the thing is, you can't get them to change. It doesn't matter what you do because that person has to be willing to change. And that's where psychology, there's a barrier where that knowledge cannot be transferred. That person themselves have to go and make that change on their own, willingly, under their own, self-direction, so to speak. So psychology is one aspect of trading that really that education cannot be transferred because some people just never pick it up. They don't pick up on their bad habits and they just keep going down that same path. So unfortunately, psychology, it's last on this list because some people never get here. And I think this is probably one of the most important ones because all these other ones are very straightforward. They're very black and white and they're easy to follow. All right. So as far as risk management, there's nothing that's extraordinary about it. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel here. There's very certain guidelines that we follow, and it's all based on math. Whereas, something like trying to get your mental health in order, that's, it's not, that's a gray area. You have to figure it out on your own. So when it comes to education, treat this as if you are going to, a university or getting your college degree. And that's where probably most people trip up, is because it's so easy to open up that brokerage account. They think they can become a professional on the first day without realizing they don't have a skill set. So when you're laying out the timeline to educate yourself, don't underestimate how long it's going to take. For me, it took a very long time because, like I was saying, I was stuck in this hamster wheel of technical analysis and just jumping from system to system without recognizing that really it was just the way I thought about the markets and the way that I was approaching markets. That was the biggest barrier to me actually finding success, because without falling over myself, tripping over myself, I probably would have gotten out of the hamster wheel of trying to find the next best thing and just stuck with a system because I didn't like losing and I kept looking for the next best thing. So education, there's no timeline on this. I can't tell you guys how long you might pick this up, but I'm just sharing information with you so you can avoid some of the mistakes that I went down in trying to find that next best thing. All right. So try and figure out how long it might take to educate yourself and figure out where you are in this process, because you're going to have weaknesses in some areas in order to get you over that hump. Because the first hump, right, is to become a profitable trader. We can't even think about hitting our first $100,000 if we can't even make $1,000 in the markets, right? So that's the first step, is to try and become profitable, and that comes with education. If you are a unprofitable trader, you are not going to make $100,000. If you can't make $1,000, make that first $1,000 and then build upon that, which we'll get into in these next steps. All right, a proven edge. Now, this is where you're going to take all the education that you have, and now you're actually going to start your first day on the job. So in order for you to get that job, right, as a trader, or as a trader that's going to take this seriously, you need to have done everything in this area, right? Worked on yourself, worked on technical analysis, worked on fundamental analysis, have risk management. All those things combine into a trading system. So all of these things will combine into a trading system. So once you have the trading system, now it's time to actually back test the system through multiple years of data, and then also forward test it until you have 3 to 6 months of consistency. Now, 3 to 6 months of consistency can look anything like some break-even months, some red months, and then some green months. All right. So out of 6 months, can you come out net positive? And it doesn't matter if that net positive is $5. Even if you come out net positive, at least you can know that you're consistent in following that same process. Because where most people mess up, and this is part of the stress testing, is yes, you can have 3 to 6 months of consistency, but what happens when you have a red month? Do you go off plan and start tilting and then start doing things that you shouldn't be doing? Right? That's part of the stress test that cannot be replicated in a backtesting environment, because you're going to feel the pressures of losing money or of blowing challenge accounts when you're in a live market environment. And I would say that that's really where the real test occurs, is you have all these skills and now you're being put to the test. So think about this as like a sport that you're trying to train for. And I always bring up basketball, right? I've mentioned this before, but think about all these skills as you building up your basketball skill set. And then when you're being put to the test is game time. So you've been drafted, now you have a contract, and maybe they're going to promise you some money, right? Maybe for that first year, they're going to give you a rookie contract. But now the stress test comes where you have to perform. You have to be able to perform in the markets to make money and to be able to keep your job. Because if you can't perform, they're going to cut you loose, and then you're back at square one. So the stress test really is having that trading system and being able to trust it long enough to see if it's going to pan out over time. And that's probably where a lot of people are going to quit, is maybe they have everything else, they have a trading system, or maybe they're going to quit in that first area where it's education, because it is overwhelming. People don't realize the level of skill that you need to have in order to do this consistently. And in my opinion, it's almost like getting a doctorate, where you have 4 years of undergrad and then 4 years of grad school. It's very much like that. But then you actually have to go through a residency where you're actually working in a hospital All right. That's where the stress test really comes about. And some people just crack under pressure. So you might drop out during school. You might drop out during grad school. You might drop out when you get to residency. There's no point in time where you're safe from anything, because there's people that have made money in the markets, and then the next year, you know, they go full time, and then the next year they give everything back. So really treat this with longevity, and really understand that your success in the markets is not guaranteed. All right. Just because you understand some of these things does not mean you've cracked the code. Okay. Because the market will always humble you, and it will always find its way to take its pound of flesh. All right. And that's something that I had to learn. And everybody that's trading is going to have to learn. You are going to get humbled at some point. You are going to go through a period where your system is not working and your back is up against the wall, and the market's going to test how you're going to handle adversity. All right. But with a proven edge, you can be confident in following that edge regardless if it's doing poorly or regardless if it's doing well. That's the biggest difference between a profitable professional trader that can eventually make $100,000 from the markets versus somebody that might have pan in the flash success and then give it all back. So not only is this video about making your first $100,000, it's also about keeping it, because there's plenty of people out there that have probably touched $100,000 in their accounts and then given it all back. I would say there's probably a ton of people that came in during the GameStop era, you know, made a bunch of money, or maybe it was crypto, made a bunch of money, and then they can't keep it. All right, that's flash in the pan success, and that's not what we're going for. We're going for consistent success, and that comes with having a solid foundation. When you have a solid foundation, you're making money in a way that is allowing you to keep it. So the proven edge is longer than just 3 to 6 months, but building the confidence around that proven edge takes time. All right, so understanding that you're going to go through rough periods, and just keep trading through it. You have to trade through the rough periods, because those next couple trades could be massive winners and you're brought back to break even. But you can't be chasing losses, right? That's a whole different story. All right, so having a proven edge, that comes from all your years of education compiling into this one trading system that you can trust. All right, so you need to have a proven edge. Now, what I will say is the many years that I spent trying to become profitable, you're gonna have a point in time where you're gonna recognize some of the biggest mistakes that you're making that's really holding you back from that next level. And for me, like I kind of mentioned, was it all came all at once. I was struggling for years upon years, and I had already built up the knowledge. Like, I knew what I should be doing. I just couldn't do it. And then it clicked. At some point it clicked, and I can't say when, because it was an accumulation of all of this knowledge, all these mistakes that I had made, all of the money that I made and given back, right? It was, you have all these learning lessons from all your failures. And that's really essentially what you have to understand, is you have to go through this journey on your own. All right. So if you're trying to get to this destination, and let's say the destination is at the top of a mountain, I can tell you the route, but you actually have to go on the route yourself. You actually have to pack your bags and go on that journey on your own, because I can't carry you up the mountain. All right. So learning from all your mistakes is eventually going to give you the edge. All right. That's part of your trading system, and that's part of the experience that I just unfortunately cannot transfer to you. No matter how much education I'm doing, no matter how much I'm talking about these events, you're going to go through your own struggles. You're going to find out things about yourself that you never knew before. And eventually, hopefully, you can come out on the other side a better person, a better trader, and be on that track to make that first $100,000. All right. So step 3, knowing once you have that proven edge, we need capital. This is also a big thing that was holding me back for a long time. And thankfully, I found something like prop. It's not necessary to take the prop firm route, but I will talk about the different pros and cons of taking one over the other. Okay, so with personal, just think about how much money we need to have in our personal account in order to make $100,000. Now, if you want to do this in a reasonable amount of time, you need to have a good starting point in capital. And my biggest problem was I would just throw in $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 because that's really all I could afford. after, paying for expenses and eating out and saving money for retirement, starting out at a low salary was one thing, but being able to set aside enough money to be comfortable and put money into my trading account, that's a hard thing. So if you're not making enough money, like I've mentioned before, try and make more money at your job. That way you can afford to invest more into your personal account. So there's a whole bunch of things going on. Don't try and be the person that's trying to go all in trading with, you don't have a dime to your name, okay? This is not going to work out the way you think is going to work out. So the biggest downside of trying to trade with a small personal account is think about how long it might take to make that first $100,000. If you have 10K in your account, you have to make 1,000% on that account, right? That is a lot of money that you have to turn around. I mean, it's not 1,000%, right? Like, you can go in and do the compounding results of your own, but if you make 100% on your account, you've only got $20,000. You got a long way to go, right? Also, factor in taxes, which we'll get into as far as the cons. But for the pros, all right, there's no rules. All right, anytime withdrawals, and it's your money. So nothing can really happen unless the brokerage goes under, which is a very, very slim chance of that happening. And if you trade futures, your money's actually insured up to, I think, $300,000 or $400,000 with some brokers. So you can at least know that when you put your money into that account, it's actually your money. Now, the cons of that is you need to have higher personal risk. So again, if you're trying to make $100,000 in a reasonable amount of time, this might take you a couple years. So if you're trying to make $100,000 net profit, I'm not talking about going from 50K to 100K, all right? I'm talking about net profit. You probably need to have 50 to 100K to reasonably make that 100K without taking too much risk. And that's unfortunate to say, because even that 100K is going to take you multiple years, because I don't think you should be aiming for 100% returns in a year. That is at a level that you possibly just are not at yet. There's some traders that can do it, right? There's some traders that have the skill set to be able to do that, but do you have the skill set to be able to do that? Are you an all-star? If you're not, you are playing with fire, okay? Cons, right? Higher personal risk. There's no rules, so there's the possibility that you might over leverage that capital and blow the account. So if you have a large personal account, there's a high risk, especially if you don't have your emotions under control, to lose all the money that's in that account. That's a major con to having the personal account, okay? No rules. So having no rules, again, is a pro and a con. It's all dependent on how you trade and how you can keep your emotions in check. Right? Needing more capital. If you have 5K, don't come to me and say you can turn that into 100K. Go ahead, challenge yourself. Come back to me when you can do it. There's plenty of people out there that have tried this and failed at it. You're probably going to be the 99th person out of 100 that's going to fail at it, okay? There's one person out there that probably can do it, but they've been trading for 15, 20 years. Right? You're not that guy. Trust me. Taxes, something that is not really talked about a whole lot, but when you're trading on a personal account, you're either going to pay short-term or long-term taxes on it, depending on how long you're holding those positions. Futures is more favorable, so I believe 60% of it is taxed as long-term and 40% of it is taxed as short-term. So there is some advantage there, but you are paying a pretty hefty amount towards taxes. All right, just keep that in mind. Prop firm, pros is the leverage. So you only have to pay a small amount to get a large account. Okay, so if you're looking for capital, you might have to pay $150 at something like Top Step. If you get funded, you pay $300 total. That includes the activation. And now all of a sudden you're trading with $150K. It's not really $150K. It's like $3,000, $3,500. But you essentially have turned your $300 investment into a $3,500 drawdown limit. That's something that a lot of people would be proud of, all right? Trading with a $3,500 drawdown limit is great, especially if you blow the account, because then you're only losing $300. You're not losing $3,500. So in order to get that same drawdown limit, you actually have to deposit $3,500 into your personal account, right? And you're not going to get the full margin. So there's leverage pros. Obviously, the biggest advantage to prop firms is just leverage. All right, don't talk to me about the live account. I don't believe any of these prop firms are really putting people on a live accounts. I think it's all BS. Take that from me. I think they're all just paying people out from evaluation fees. But, you know, comment below if you think differently. I haven't seen any firm out there that is really monetizing traders the way that they possibly could. Because if you really think about it, how much money do they have to put into an account to be able to even just cover some of your withdrawals? Do you think they're really going to put $100,000, $150,000, $300,000 behind somebody they don't even know? To me, they're not going to do that. All right. Low cost. All right. And then the taxes. One thing that you'll understand about taxes when you get into the profitable stage is that they get taxed as ordinary income. And in the States, if you don't know how that works, right, it goes on a scale. So your first X amount that you make is taxed at a lower percentage. And then the next, as you go up tax brackets, right, that next piece of income gets taxed at a higher percentage. All right, so there's advantages to doing it this way. Whereas if you're trading on a personal account, it's all getting taxed at one rate. So with the prop firm, I believe it's like the first like 50K is very low taxes, if any. So you can look up the tax brackets if you want. You know, just type in 2024 personal income tax brackets, and you'll figure out that it's much more advantageous to trade prop firms over personal. But again, there's higher risk because there's no guarantee of you getting paid out. Not only that, but there's hidden or unfavorable rules. Some of these firms have hidden rules or unfavorable rules. Some of them are a little bit more favorable. And then the issue is that all these firms have different rules. So you have to go in and actually be aware of the different firms that you're trading. Now, this is probably one of the biggest needle movers when it comes to trying to make your first 100K, is because if you have more capital, that first 100K comes much faster. And that's essentially how I made my first 100K, was I needed to have a large capital base. And when I made my first 100K, I believe I had 500K in prop funding. All right, so that took an investment. It took me, it took about 5 to 10K of my own capital paying for these challenges to get funded to that level to be able to make X amount. All right, so don't come into the game thinking that you're going to be able to take your $250 to 100K. It's just extremely unreasonable. You're probably not going to be able to do it. And you need to treat this like a business. If you want to treat it like a real business, you have to have some capital coming into the game, because you need to have skin in the game in order to have capital to get you to that level. Because you can't assume that you're going to be able to take that very small account into $100,000. The more capital you have, the easier it gets. That's all I'm going to say. All right, and then step 4 is reinvesting the profits. This is going to be extremely, extremely important for you guys when you're trying to hit that 100K. So no matter what level you're at, maybe you've made your first $500, maybe you've made your first $1,000. It's not going to do you any good if you take the profits and blow it on something dumb. Okay, so if you take your first 15K and go buy a Rolex, and then you have no money in the bank to do anything with, you're essentially just broke again, and you're just buying things that you shouldn't be buying. All right, put yourself in a position that allows you to not be so stressed about all these things. So the first thing is you're going to get profit from your accounts. All right, that's assuming you have an edge and assuming you have the education to do so. Is how do I get to that first point? And, you know, go back and reassess where you are in all of this. Do I have all of these things checked off? Do I have technical edge? Do I understand fundamental analysis enough, right? What is the central bank doing? What are these central banks doing across the world? And what's the state of the economy in each one? Do I have the risk management? Do I have the psychology? Do I have a proven edge that's tested over time? That's how you're going to get to profit. Now, once you're in profit, how do we go about taking that and turning it into something bigger? All right, first we have to worry about taxes. So whatever you make, right, if you realize those gains and you withdraw that money, and this is assuming you withdraw the money, because if you don't withdraw the money, it's not really realized gains. I mean, it is if that tax period ends. So let's say if you make $20,000 on your trading account, and then the end of the tax year comes around and you don't report it, right? And then you lose the money. Well, you still owe taxes on that money because that fiscal year just ended, right? And your broker's going to have that statement. So the easiest way of doing this, I would say, is paying yourself on a regular schedule and understanding the fiscal year, what time you're going to have to close your trades, withdraw all the profits that you make, and set aside money for taxes. Because that's something that maybe not a lot of people are thinking about, and then they just go and blow their accounts, or they blow the money and then they owe the full the full amount on taxes, and they can't make it up, so they have to withdraw from their account. Now, not only are you not paying your taxes, but now you have to take out money from your account, and it's going to impact your balance, and you're not going to have enough money to trade. All right. So covering your tax liability first, setting aside the right amount of taxes. When I was trading, I was setting aside, 30% of whatever I was making to cover myself. And then as I was making more, I was setting more aside. So making sure you're covering your taxes, and then anything past that, you can think about maybe covering some of your expenses. So if you're trading as a secondary income, right, maybe you have some expenses that you want to start covering. Maybe you're helping to cover your housing, or maybe you're covering some of your groceries or your cell phone bill, right? So, if you can cut these out, if you can cut the expenses out, and if you can cut your paying yourself out, right? So taxes come first after your profit, then maybe your expenses. This is something that you can think about, is do I want to cover some of my expenses? If not, then pay yourself. So if you decide to pay yourself, right, you're essentially starting back your account balance where it was. There's nothing wrong with that, but just understand that you're not going to be able to compound faster. So the more capital you have, the faster it's going to be to compound. All right. So when I really started skyrocketing my profits, I wasn't really paying myself. I was reinvesting the profits into more and more challenges. I still paid myself because I was making a boatload from these prop firms, but I was still taking a large chunk of that and reinvesting it into more prop accounts and in my own personal accounts. All right. So in order to scale up quickly, that's really what you need to do. And it's the same thing with business. When you want to scale up quickly, it requires an investment. And either you're going to recycle the money, the profits that you make back into the business, or you're going to start pouring more of your more of your own personal capital into the business to be able to scale faster. So once you actually get some traction in trading, and that's probably the hardest part, that's why this is left towards the last step, is once you can make that $500, all right, now I have to wisely reinvest this $500 after taxes and expenses, after paying myself. I have to be able to wisely reinvest this capital back into my trading account or back into more prop accounts in order to get that bigger capital base and be able to scale faster. Because I know you guys want to be able to hit that first 100K, but these are all the necessary steps that you need to take. And you're probably going to look at all these steps and think, wow, this is probably more than I've thought about. Well, yes, it is, because this is a business. You have to treat trading like a business, right? And in order for you to get that to that first 100K, which I would argue most businesses aren't even hitting the 100K revenue mark, right? Or most small businesses, maybe they're just small mom and pop shops. How do you get to the first 100K? You have to have systems in place. You have to have a process in place. And you have to manage the finances appropriately. All right, don't be the business that's paying yourself exorbitant amounts of money, and then the business is going broke, and then you're never going to hit the financial milestones that you set out for yourself. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one. This was, I would say, an in-depth guide, a very basic guide, very easy to follow, I think, but hard to implement. And these are the necessary steps that you need to make your first $100,000 from the markets. I hope you guys enjoyed the video and learned something to put you on track to make your first $100,000 in the markets. If you're interested in learning how you can work directly with me, just like my student Mike here, who just had a $14,000 payout and is on his way to smashing his first $100,000 in the markets, then make sure you book a call using the link in the description. Also, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, as I'm dropping free value to this channel each and every week. So until next time, this is Kyle signing off.